Well, good morning, church. I'm all decked out in my new hat and hoodie, and I'll explain that in a little bit. This is also my first time doing any type of a stream, so I'm anticipating massive errors and mistakes, and um, having to correct some of my thought process and all of this. But it's just a new thing for me. I wanted to give it a shot, so I got my special pajama hoodie and my cool hat. Or I think it's cool. I'm realizing that's just my opinion. Um, I think it's cool because I've been thinking about this hat for a long time. This hat has been uh, something that I've put a lot of thought into. And yesterday, or I'm sorry, 2 days ago, I posted the first of the Cherch series, and and I got a message from an old teacher of mine, Mr. Jacobs, Sid Jacobs, um, and Mr. Jacobs just he plays a really important role in my story and in my life. Um, and You may have somebody in your life that you think of as I tell you this story. But um, I grew, so I, most of my childhood was spent in Louisiana. I lived there from the age of 2 to 14. And at the age of 14, just after my 14th birthday, we moved to Arizona. And we moved here the day before school started. So it's a it's a Sunday morning, I think, um, and we're literally trying to figure out like what our where our stuff goes. Like we're getting into the house, and we had just traveled 3 days or whatever it is from Louisiana to Chandler, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. Anyway, and so the very next morning, on Monday morning, we're in the respective offices of the schools that we're going to. My sister's at her school, I'm at mine, and we're meeting with counselors and principals, and they're trying to figure out how to integrate us quickly, And fact is, I'm just freaking out. In Louisiana, I was a person who got picked on a lot, uh, lots of fights. I was starting to get into mischief because I was trying to figure out how to not get beat up. And so if I hung out with the kids that did bad stuff, I got beat up less than if I didn't hang out with kids that beat kids up. And so coming into Arizona, my main goal was to figure out how to not get beat up. And one of the counselors that was helping us out, he was this old, he was an Olympic wrestler, actually. A really cool dude, but he's very competitive, kind of a straight shooter. And he let me know that, like, by the end of that day, someone was probably going to try to fight me. And how I handled that scenario was going to be everything. And so I was freaking out, and kind of fast forward in this conversation, they were figuring out things I was into and interests, and trying to figure out how to get me in some classes that at least would help me with the transition. And one of the things was they said they do their announcements on a television. Now, some of you are much younger than me, and hearing that, I'm like, well, what else would you do your school announcements on? But this was kind of a new thing for me. I had never seen anything like that before. Like a news station inside a school was a new thing. This was the early '90s, and just to have that was like, for me, that was rich people stuff, and this was just like crazy opportunity. And so I jumped at that and had no idea what I was doing, but I jumped at it. Mr. Jacobs was the teacher that was responsible for um, uh, the announcements, and he just he did this thing with such joy. And you've heard about teachers like Mr. Jacobs, where they care so deeply about the success of each kid, and they try their best to make things a fun experience. And Mr. Jacobs was absolutely that teacher. And I don't know, actually I do know. I know that Mr. Jacobs made each kid feel this way. But for me, he made me feel like I was the only one there. Now, I know that Mark and Alex and Dante and Franklin, they all felt that same way. I know they did. And but Mr. Jacobs was he was my teacher. It was this crazy experience, and it would expose me and introduce me to a form of storytelling that would change my life forever. It would become my career, right? Um, and so, Mr. Jacobs, the impact you had on me, the love you showed to me was just unbelievable. And here's the crazy thing: I'm 40 years old. I'm 40 years old, and Mr. Jacobs is still that man's still reaching out to me, encouraging me, giving me guidance, motivating me. And we don't talk all the time. I don't want to mislead the situation. Um, but that man really cares about people, and he's not out there starting big movements. He's not a internet sensation. He's not famous in any way other than being famous in my world. The people that know me closely have heard his name before. They've heard Mr. Jacobs' name, and they've also heard Mr. G, Mr. Gonzalez. They've heard other teachers' names. Don't get me wrong. I've had many teachers make significant impact in my life. I've been very fortunate there with some teachers that genuinely cared. But Mr. Jacobs did something that then Mr. G could follow up on. Mr. Jacobs in junior high made me feel included. He just welcomed me in. Mr. G challenged me to grow into the man I would be. So in junior high, I was made to feel included. In high school, I was challenged to grow into the man, or start growing into the man I would end up being. And so in many ways, I tell people that, Mr. G is like a father figure to me, because he treated us, again, Chris, Dario, D, Holly, you know, um, the list goes on and on of people that Mr. G connected with and influenced. But he taught me how to lie honestly. And someday I'll talk about this more. I just want to respect your time this morning. But I grew up struggling with telling the truth, because I would think of all these stories, I would think of all these things, and whether it was trying to fit in with somebody or just pure entertainment, I had all these stories that would develop in my head, and they would be in that storytelling ability would be so strong that I couldn't figure out the line between truth and false. And I would just tell stories that just come out of me. And my stories negatively impacted so many people, from family members to friends at school to relationships I'd be in, things like that. And the lies were stupid. like these weren't like lies where you're trying to get out of something, although sometimes I did that too. Um, but I would tell the dumbest stories, and I would look at you like I believed it with all my heart. And so Mr. Gonzalez, showed me how to define truth, and he allowed me to see the camera as a place where I could lie and have it be an honest thing. Like, tell these imaginary stories through the camera and save honesty for when you're out here with other people. And so these two guys were just really impactful. And for Mr. Jacobs to message me, to be the first one, by the way, he was the first one to message me um, the other day on that video, and it just was fitting to me. And when I think about how Mr. G taught me how to define truth, that word define would become a theme in my life as I would exit high school and I would get more successful in my job, or I would then go back to school, change my career back to filmmaking, then come back out into the professional world again as a filmmaker. Defining things is really important. And I want to put an asterisk next to this next sentence, because one of the things that's really important to me with this mangazine.life project and with this Cherch project is I do not see myself being a person that makes political statements, and that's going to seem hypocritical with this hat on. So I acknowledge that, and I want to address that part of it. I have no problem having conversations about politics. I don't have any reservations about having conversations about issues that we as a group of people face. But what's really important to me is that we clearly define what we're talking about. And the Make America Great Again thing has been confusing for me, because I don't know that my definition of great is the same as everyone else in this country. And one of the things that being a person who was born in America, who doesn't know a different way of life, who's experienced a ton of privilege, being American, by the way, being American has a ton of privilege. And, you kind of grow up just knowing what you know. And as an adult, to be challenged in those things is good and healthy. The way Mr. Gonzalez challenged me in my habits, he challenged me to use my habits differently. I'm challenging us as a group of people, whoever's resonating with this, to define great. And one of the things that I feel, this is just my opinion about our country, is that it seemed to be that the intention was to root our decision making in what appeared to be love. So we have a ton of history that is not loving. Equality has been something in this country that we've had to deal with. And I think our country has, even though we all agree it's not fast enough, that we get to a place where every person is respected and included equally. I will challenge you to find a country that's done what America has done in that conversation faster. And by the way, America might be one of the few countries that's had to do this kind of thing, because we're one of the first countries that's open to that kind of thing. And so when I look at what made America great, in my opinion, was that the idea of universal health care was based on a principle of love. It was a care and concern for the well-being of everyone. When we talk about freedom of religion, freedom of speech. It's an act of love that you allow people to speak up and speak into your life. It is a measure of equality to be able to do that. And it is an act of love to listen to someone and hear what they have to say. And plenty of people in my life have shown me that kind of love, even when I wasn't able to do it in return. The list goes on and on when we talk about border control or, um, I don't know, a lot of political issues have this essence of a loving measure that started the conversation. And you and I would both agree, I think. I guess I don't want to assume where you're at, but like there are several situations that have gone way out of control. Um, the intent of some of these things was love. And so what I've learned is that these mentors in my life have defined with detail what the expectations are. And I'd just like to throw out a suggestion that we really make America love again. And my entire effort with mangazine.life is to make sure that we're talking about love with the right tone, that we are talking about love as acceptance and respect and integrity. It does not equate to happiness. Love is, I'll quote the Bible on this one, I guess. The Bible describes love as patient and kind and generous. And so if you think about somebody that's saying something that you disagree with, it might mean being patient and letting them finish their sentence. Kindness might look like hearing their pain, acknowledging their pain, because their pain is real. Even if their perspective might be incorrect, it's still their perspective and it's still their truth for right now. On the flip side, if I'm in a bunch of pain and I am trying to be heard, my hope is that someone will listen to me, but also that I remain open-minded for them to guide me, that I don't go into that conversation believing that I have all of the answers. Great is a word that is subjective. There was a small period of my time where I lived in my car. There's a larger portion of the time that I was an adult. I was a divorced man, a father, and I was living with my mother in my late 20s, early 30s. And it was humiliating to me because I just expect more out of myself. But there might be people that are in their late 30s or early 30s, late 20s in the same situation I was in, where living with your parents is honorable and it's awesome. And there's no pride issue there at all. There's actually pride in living with your parents. It might be beautiful. Both might be great. And so greatness is opinion based. Love, we can define love. We can show a desire and a willingness to be in this world together with respect and integrity and care and concern for the well-being of the people around you. No matter how much each of us have been hurt, we can still come to the table and show forgiveness. And so I have all these knickknacks around me, and I'll show some of them at times. I guess they have funny, sarcastic sayings and genuine sayings, but as you can probably tell, one of my heroes, one of my fictional heroes, is Don Draper. I don't encourage how he lived out his marriage and his drinking by any means, but he's a character that's still brilliant, and I just love the show Mad Men. It connects with me in a lot of ways. But I have this little thing, this little notebook with Don on there. It says, if you don't like the conversation, or if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. And I found myself struggling with this lack of defining great. I don't have an issue with our nation's leader rallying people together. And I encourage the leadership of this nation to find love in the root of what you're trying to accomplish. And that'd be pretty great. I also want to remind everybody that there is an unlimited time offer going right now, and that love is absolutely free today. It's free every day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Right now, it is absolutely free, and you should act now. Call someone. Look yourself in the mirror and forgive yourself. Show yourself some love. And know that you're welcome here. Hey, listen, everybody. Thank you for indulging in this whole thing. I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback and your thoughts on anything that was said. And I promise to remain open-minded. But I also hope that we can have respectful dialogue about all this stuff. I love you. I'm thinking about you every single time I make something. And by the way, cheesy segue, I am selling these. Started selling these at mangazine.life. So pick up a hat, pick up a hoodie. There's even mugs there. Go check it out and spread some love. At minimum, let's just be a positive voice in the world and spread some love and have some fun with things. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.